The ideals of DEI are not much different than the ideals of Karl Marx in his fight for economic equality and economic equity between the haves and the have-nots, which, by the way, equity is an equal distribution of capital for equal outcomes, and I believe the equity in our DEI means the same thing.
Okay, I got to stop Lindsey right there. I know that Lindsey and I both went to the same high school, same school system, Oldham County High School, Oldham County Schools. And I know that in those classrooms there were often one or more copies of a book called the dictionary. And there certainly were several in the libraries within those schools. Now, maybe things changed. I graduated, I think, probably about 5 or 6 years before Lindsey did, and maybe Lindsey's big into removing books from the classroom, so maybe those dictionaries got taken out. But I'm thinking that they were probably still there at the time. And those books continue to exist to today, and they're now online. You can find Merriam-Webster, the most popular American publisher of dictionaries, is online. Oxford Dictionary is probably the most respected dictionary. That's online. But I went and looked up the definition of equity, and here's what it says. All right, definition 1. Equity, justice according to natural law or right, specifically freedom from bias or favoritism. Part B of that definition, something that is equitable. Definition 2. The money value of a property or of an interest in a property in excess of claims or liens against it. Now, Lindsey is a realtor, and I know that I've heard that version of the term used by realtors before. I don't think realtors typically are big on Marxism, but I could be wrong. And that doesn't sound like it has any real tie to Marxism, but there you go. Second part of that definition, part B, the common stock of a corporation. C, a risk, interest, or ownership right in property. D, a right, claim, or interest existing or valid in equity. And then definition 3, it gets really obscure. 3A is a system of law originating in the English Chancery and comprising a settled and formal body of legal and procedural rules and doctrines that supplement, aid, or override common and statute law and are designed to protect the rights and enforce duties fixed by substantive law. Part B, trial or remedial justice under or by the rules and doctrines of equity. C, a body of legal doctrines and rules developed to enlarge, supplement, or override a narrow, rigid system of law. One thing I want to point out here, and it's something that Lindsey does quite well here, is this idea of tying equity into Marxism. Now, I've already shown that it has nothing to do with Marxism. She's redefined the word for her own needs. But she doesn't care. She wants to plant this seed that equity is somehow scary. It's Marxism. It is something that is un-American. And this is something that Republicans do quite often. We can see it, in so much of what's happened these past few years in Frankfurt. We've seen the same types of techniques used against CRT, critical race theory, which nobody was teaching in our public schools, but everybody was afraid of it. We've seen it with transgender people. There's all sorts of accusations about what's happening with transgender youth that rather than discuss the real issues and real concerns, we've painted those individuals as scary and unholy and unchristian, and the treatment of them is somehow un-American. And here we now have diversity, equity, inclusion is Marxist. And this has a long tradition in the Republican Party, dating back at least to the 1950s, which is when the Red Scare, McCarthyism happened, which I learned about it in high school. I'm assuming Lindsey did too, both in American history and in English class, learning about Arthur Miller's The Crucible, which is an allegory about that time period, based in the Salem witch trials. And the interesting thing is that Joseph McCarthy had a lot of power and a lot of pull until somebody called him on it. And ironically, Joseph McCarthy, part of his counsel was Roy Cohn, who is close friends with another liar, Donald Trump. But anyway, in the middle of a hearing, some hearings in Congress, there was a exchange between Attorney Joseph Welch and Senator McCarthy. And McCarthy had gone all in on one of Welch's colleagues, claiming he was communist. And Welch stopped him at that point, and I'm reading here, so forgive me. He says to Senator McCarthy in a famous exchange, "Senator, may we not drop this? We know he belonged to the Lawyers Guild. Let us not assassinate this lad further. Senator, you've done enough. Have you no decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?" And here's the thing. If you're willing to lie, if you're willing to make up anything to sell your law, to sell your ideas, to impugn other people or ideas, including Lindsey's definite redefining of equity, where is your decency? At what point have you rejected decency to become a liar, to mislead people, to hurt people? So I ask Lindsey Tichenor, at long last, have you left no sense of decency?